We are now in the 6th episode of the 30 Years' War by Kings and Generals.
The French have decisively won at Rocroi, and that has swung the pendulum of the 30 Years' War yet again. Their Swedish allies, commanded by Torstensson, have recovered from their earlier defeats, and are now attacking the heart of the Holy Roman Empire, advancing further than even their legendary king Gustavus Adolphus. But is that enough to end the war? The Battle of Freiburg is going to prove that more blood has to flow. Shout out to Rocroi was one of the most serious defeats the Habsburgs suffered during the 30 Years' War. It now seemed that nothing could stop Condé from taking over the Spanish Netherlands, as his opponent Jean de Bec's Spanish army was much smaller than that of the French prince. However, the Spanish Netherlands was a country of many dozens of fortified cities, so all Bec needed to do was reinforce the city Condé was going to attack. The latter went for Thienville, in the hopes of cutting the Spanish Netherlands from the Habsburg territory to the south. Bec managed to sneak in reinforcements before Condé besieged Thienville on June 16, 1643. This allowed the city to withstand a 2-month siege. The campaigning season was coming to an end, so Condé abandoned the siege and returned to France. The leader of the Dutch Republic, Frederick Henry, attempted to advance from the east, but Bec successfully bluffed him into thinking that the Spaniards received fresh troops, which forced the former to retreat. Despite this minor improvement in the situation, it was clear to the Spanish king, Philip IV, that the situation in the Netherlands was untenable. He needed all his troops to fight off the uprisings in Portugal and Catalonia, so Bec would get no help. Philip also basically broke his alliance with his Habsburg cousin Ferdinand III and started peace negotiations with the Dutch Republic.
Wow, that's a pretty big thing to lose, like the Spanish Habsburgs, considering that the Teresios were a big part of the imperial force, and like I said, Spain still at this point is one of the strongest nations in Europe, so them clocking out and leaving the Holy Roman Empire to itself would kind of I don't see how the Habsburgs or the Holy Roman Empire would win if that happens, you know what I mean? Especially now that the Swedish are now back on the aggressive, you know? And the French as well have begun moving yeah, I don't know how you win from that point.
Back west, the Swedish commander Torstensson was slow to exploit his recent decisive victory at Breitenfeld. In November of 1642, he besieged Leipzig and sent Königsmark towards Westphalia to distract the imperial forces in that area. The fall of Leipzig a month later was a serious blow to the Elector of Saxony, John George. Torstensson's troops took Chemnitz in late December and started marching towards the crucial fortress of Freiburg, besieging it in early 1643. Meanwhile, the loser of the Battle of Breitenfeld, Archduke Leopold Wilhelm, had returned to Vienna, leaving his army under Piccolomini to be reformed at Reconitz. The latter was incredibly effective, and by January had 14,000 men available to help Freiburg. Indeed, Piccolomini's advance towards the fortress forced Torstensson to go into winter quarters. Piccolomini returned to Bohemia and was inexplicably removed from command in favour of Gallus. The campaign was renewed in late March as Torstensson attempted to invade Bohemia. A long series of maneuvers, marches and countermarches between his army and that of Gallus began and ran well into October, when Torstensson was able to reach Brunn and raided the area. His hope was that he might receive support for an attack from the largely Protestant Transylvania. Simultaneously, the Swedish commander sent a force under Königsmark to raid Franconia and then Saxony, in hopes that it would force the Imperials to divide their forces, while Gallus ordered Krakow to march into Pomerania via Brandenburg to weaken Sweden's hold over the region. Supported by a small Polish detachment, Krakow managed to take a few settlements. Gallus decided to reinforce him with cavalry under Puckheim, but Torstensson was able to destroy that group around Troppau. At the same time, Königsmark was commanded to engage Krakow, and by the end of September, the Imperial force was pushed into neutral Poland. Back in Moravia, Torstensson, who didn't get any help from Transylvania, lost all of his momentum besieging Jägendorf, and as Oxenstierna was planning to invade Denmark, he called the commander back north. Despite being Protestant and starting the 30 Years' War on the same side, Denmark and Sweden were natural rivals. The success of Sweden made Danish King Christian IV increase the tax for trade passing through the straits. Word leaked out that the Danes were negotiating an alliance with the Habsburgs, and that made the conflict that would later be known as the Torstensson War inevitable. Oxenstierna's plan was for Marshal Horn to attack from the north, Admiral Fleming to secure the Baltic Sea, and Torstensson to strike Jutland from the south. Although Torstensson feared that his absence would allow Gallus to take back Silesia.
Alright, that's interesting. So, I didn't expect Christian to ever show up again after his humiliating defeats. But, I'm wondering if he's gonna get more involved, because he seems like... I know there's a war between the two, but I'm, like, wondering about this conflict in particular. But either way, it seems like this time we're gonna be following the Swedish as they're making headway into the Holy Roman Empire.
Moravia, and Saxony. He strengthened the fortresses in the area, and publicly announced that he was retreating to Pomerania in order to confuse the enemy. The march north started in mid-November, and in late November, he entered the Danish holdings in Holstein. Torstensson occupied a number of fortresses, and by January 20th, 1644, the Swedes were ready to invade Jutland. Leaving some troops to besiege Gluckstadt, Torstensson moved the rest to the narrow channel separating the mainland from the island of Funen, while Horn took the provinces of Halland and Scania, save for Malmö.
Okay, they're just jumping the Danish now. Alright. Alright, I was like a bit confused there, but now I see, yeah, that they're moving their whole operation to just attack him now. Alright, let's see how Christian responds.
Both Swedish generals needed Fleming to win the naval battle to take the Danish capital, but Christian took command of the fleet and defeated the Swedes in a number of naval engagements between February and July, most importantly at Kolbura Haida, in the aftermath of which Fleming was killed and the Swedish fleet was blockaded at Kiel.
Oh wow, good on you, Christian. Like, last time we saw Christian, he kinda got wrecked. But, like, it seems like he's better on sea than he was on land. Because he's defeated the Swedish. Christian redemption arc? I did not expect that in this series.
Simultaneously, Imperial commander in Westphalia, Hatzfeld, began threatening Torstensson from the southwest, and Gallus appeared from the southeast in July. The Swedish commander left Vranjel to secure Jutland, and advanced south rapidly with what troops he had, using scorched earth tactics while retreating back to his initial positions. Gallus's troops suffered from the lack of supplies.
Again, I've never seen the scorched earth policy ever be, like, countered. Like, it might be... I'm pretty sure at one point in history there must have been a way it was, like, surely. But in this channel's history, every time we see the scorched earth, it is always brutally effective. I'm like, it's probably one of the most effective things you can do. Granted, it requires sacrifice on your part if you're burning your own territories. But still, you know?
And he wasted months worried that the Swedes might cross the Elbe. At the same time, Königsmark was sent south, drawing away Hatzfeld. The caution the Imperial commanders employed played against them, as Sweden entered an alliance with the Dutch, and their united navies finally defeated Christian at Fehmarn, crippling.
Oh wow. Okay, the Dutch? Okay, the Dutch are in now. And they defeated Christian. Dang, Christian was kind of on a roll there, but he got wrecked. Oh my goodness.
The Danish navy in the process. Although no major battles were fought between the Swedes and the Imperials in 1644, Gallus's mismanagement, famine, desertions and plague reduced his troops to a few thousand, and the Habsburg army basically ceased to exist. An alliance between Sweden and Transylvania was signed, with the prince of the latter, George I Rákóczi, was eager to support Torstensson's march against Vienna.
Yeah, the Transylvanians in like the first few episodes were trying to besiege Vienna. So now they're back in the game, and okay, again they really want this city, huh? They want Vienna to fall. And the Swedes are using quite a lot of diplomacy on their side, getting you know, to help defeat Christian, and now with Transylvania. So the Swedish are using diplomacy to help get by. I'm surprised Sweden is still in the game. Like, I thought after the death of Gustavus, they would be like, well, you know, let's cut our losses, let's go home. But no, they're like, we're gonna keep going, and we're gonna keep fighting. Like, I'm kind of impressed by that, you know?
However, we need to leave Torstensson for now and focus on the events in the west. The defense of the Holy Roman Empire in the Rhine region was mostly left to the Elector of Bavaria, Maximilian I, and his army, commanded by Franz von Mercy, managed to effectively destroy the French army under Ranso at Tuttlingen on November 24, 1643. This balanced the decisive French victory at Rocroi and gave Bavaria the initiative. After wintering in the area, Mercy took Überlingen in May and then besieged Huttenwil, planning to starve it out. This gave the new French commander of the theatre, Henri Turenne, time to organize his forces. Although he had 10,000 troops, mostly made up of Germans from Weimar, against 20,000 commanded by Mercy, Turenne crossed the Rhine on June 1st in 2 columns. By June 4th, Turenne was at Höfingen, and even defeated a small Bavarian detachment. Despite that, the French just didn't have enough troops to fight and started their retreat. Mercy left a small group to continue the siege and moved to the west, besieging Freiburg on the 26th, while Turenne set a camp at Betzenberg and started a series of skirmishes, killing a few hundred Imperial soldiers. However, all that was in vain, as Freiburg fell on the 29th. It seemed that all the French gains of 1638 were about to be reversed. Yet the French Prime Minister, Cardinal Mazarin, had another idea. Duke of Orleans Gaston was assigned to lead the army.
Oh, dang, Louis is gonna go fight Mercy himself? Like, he's making way here, so I'm guessing Louis is gonna be the guy who's gonna have to take on Mercy, since he's already proven himself, like, as a competent commander after his last battle with the Imperials.
In Flanders, and Condé was sent to the Rhine theatre and appointed as the commander of the German army. His 10,000 marched towards Turenne, reaching him on August 2nd, just 13 days after the appointment. As Mercy was forced to leave small detachments at Freiburg and Huttenwil, he now had 17,000 troops against 20,000 under Condé.
Alright, so I'm interested in seeing how Condé wins. Last battle, he did amazing, you know, against the Imperial. So I'm actually interested in seeing if he can keep up that momentum, or if if the numbers game. Granted, the numbers game is a bit. It's not too overwhelming. Like what, 20,000, 17,000. It's not like before where it was just 10,000 versus 20,000. So the numbers have been upped for the French side, but
Mercy probably knew that the usually rash Conde was going to attack directly, and he also lacked horses, which made a retreat difficult, so he started creating a fortified position to the southwest of Freiburg, an area that was favourable for this tactic, with its river valleys, hills and forests. The Schönberg Hill, which was impossible to form a line formation on, was central in this plan. Mercy's north was secured due to the river Dreisam, while on his right flank, his troops erected a line of palisades from Haslach to the western slopes of the Schönberg Hill, further defended by the Mooswald forest to the west. A sconce and a star fort were placed on the western edge of the hill to make scaling it even more costly. These fortifications, that could have put the likes of Julius Caesar to shame, were manned by 5 infantry regiments, 4,000.
Okay. So as we covered last time, the French, their greatest advantage, at least kings and generals like to point out, was their cavalry. So, and we see how Conde completely thrashed the Spanish with his cavalry, destroying like 2 lines, the second and the third, like in a row at once with just his cavalry attack. So I kind of do like that Mercy's aware of this, and he's like, alright, let me pick great terrain that can instantly negate the French's strength. Like, I think that's just great. Mercy is striking me as competent, and I'm interested in seeing if he can pull off the win. Since he's the defensive one here, he's doing a great job of, like, preparing himself for that. But we'll see what Conde, if he has a response to any of this, you know?
1,000 or so soldiers, supported by 5 guns. The Imperial left was made up of 1,000 or so footmen, but that was enough, as they were defending a narrow passage, the Bahnstein, between Schönberg Hill and another forest to the east. That pass was also blocked by obstacles, but in general, it wasn't expected that the French were going to attack here, as bypassing Schönberg would have their left flank open to attack. A small group was stationed on top of the hill to coordinate the 2 wings divided by the hill. The majority of the Imperial troops, some 12,000, stayed in the main camp to the south of Haslach. The French knew of these preparations. Turenne and Conde argued on the best course of action, and this was the precursor of the debates that would happen within the.
Alright. Conde wants to go in, I'm assuming, Leroy Jenkins style. But let's see, Turenne is like, you know, we are not English, right? They are not going to make movie about us if we bum rush and get killed. Oh man. I always love seeing kings and generals throw in jokes, like, you know, usually things are played more straight into the fact, though I like when he sneaks in a joke or two. Okay, so yeah, the thing is, Mercy is kind of planning on Conde charging in and being straightforward. And since they're aware of the preparations, then yeah, they would kind of be feeding into Mercy's plan if they just rushed in, depending on where they rush in from.
French military community for the next decades and centuries. Turenne was advising not to engage Mercy's remarkable position directly, and to move north and then west, cutting the Imperial supply line to the north of Freiburg, which would have forced the Bavarian commander to retreat east, leaving his rear vulnerable to the charges of the superior French cavalry. However, Conde was in charge, and he believed that the Bavarians could be defeated with a frontal attack, so he overruled Turenne and other generals and ordered a direct assault on the 3rd of August.
I know that Turenne hasn't had a great, overwhelming victory like Conde did in the last video, but I'm not gonna lie, I kind of like, I feel like Turenne's plan probably better, in my opinion. Like I said, Mercy has planned for Conde to be, like, straightforward. That's the whole point of the preparations with the defensive things. So I feel like Conde it would be playing right into his hands if with this frontal attack. I think attacking the supply lines and essentially forcing them to move would probably be better. Didn't we cover this with the Frederick the Great series, though? Apparently there's debate if even that was advised or whatever. But point is, yeah, I think if you can win a battle without this, probably better. I mean, I don't know. Conde has proven himself, but like, we'll see, I guess. I don't know. I still think Terrain's idea sounds safer and maybe more effective, but again, we'll see.
Turenne was sent to reconnoitre the enemy defences and found the Banstein Pass. He was instructed to advance here with 5,000 footmen, while Conde would command 5,000 infantry and a few hundred cavalry against the Imperial right. 3,000 or so horsemen defended the left side of Conde's forces, and a few guns were set up on a small hill behind his positions, with the rest of the army in reserve between the two French commanders. The attack was to start at 5 PM, which was another controversial decision. Turenne's forces had to march 4 hours before the fight, which tired them, and it was just hours before sunset, meaning that the French had mere hours to win the battle. Conde's offense.
Boy, Conde's really pushing it, eh? Again, he's proven, like I said, last video, he proved to be a capable commander, though I'm like kind of like a bit iffy. I guess we'll see, I don't know, maybe he might pull off a big upset and prove me wrong, but I don't know, I'm feeling a bit iffy about this, guys. I don't know, are you?
Started from the village of Ebringen against the village of Borl. This was the weakest link in the Imperial fortifications, since other redoubts weren't able to assist directly, and the French led by Espinard were able to overcome the wall despite enemy fire. Scaling the walls broke their formation, however, and the Imperial fire on the other side of the wall forced Conde's forces to retreat down the hill. This time, the French leader ordered Despinant to attack the southeast portion of the wall, with Tournon being sent against the southwest. Once again, the wall was taken, and once again the French were greeted by Bavarian fire. Despinant's already battered troops weren't able to resist for long. Most of them retreated downhill, while a group under Persson dispersed in the forest to the east. Soon, Tournon's units, who were disheartened by the Allied rout, fell back to Ebringen. The French were taking heavy casualties, but not nearly enough to change Conde's mind. The French general ordered a third attack, leaving only cavalry in reserve. For the third time, his troops surmounted the walls. However, this time, Bavarian cannons further north were finally turned and used against them, killing many. On the other hand, the defenders of Borl were running low on ammunition, and the troops, led personally by Conde, reached and attacked them. Simultaneously, Persson's regiment surprisingly managed to reform in the woods and joined the fight against the Imperial defences from the east. The defenders were overwhelmed and slaughtered.
Okay, he accomplished that part, though I don't know. He did lose a lot of men he did take quite a beating there getting that. And that's just the first part. Like, I'm wondering if that's a precursor for how the rest is gonna go. Again, like I said, I don't know how this is gonna go, guys. Like, a part of me is like a bit iffy about all this. Oh, man, I don't know, man.
Meanwhile, Turenne's flank reached its position earlier than expected, headed by a vanguard of 1,000 musketeers under Roqueservier. Mercy's outpost sent word of their approach and informed the commander. Turenne probably knew that he was facing a minor force and attacked at 4:15 PM, eager to break his foe before they were reinforced. The initial French advance pushed the defenders back, but
Mercy's hauling his way to immediately meet Turenne.
Mercy, who considered this attack to be more dangerous than the one that was being openly prepared by Condé, arrived in time with 5,000 soldiers to push Roqueservier back, wounding the French leader in the process. Turenne's situation was bad. He had the numerical advantage, a cavalry reserve and artillery nearby, but wasn't able to use any of that due to the narrowness of the passage. Furthermore, he had to attack immediately in order to tie up enough of Mercy's forces to give Condé's attack a chance.
Yeah, again, the geography, man. Mercy, I think, really picked a great place to fight his defensive battle. And, like, this is a great example of it, you know? He's managed to negate a lot of Terrain's, like, advantages.
So he moved to the front line and led the offense himself. With no room to maneuver and use their advantages, the French were suffering heavy casualties, but continued to fight. At that moment, Condé's troops once again were moving north, this time to take Sternschanze. Reuchenberg, who was left in command by Mercy, mustered 2,000 and moved south to reinforce the redoubts on Schönberg. The two sides skirmished for an hour, but Reuchenberg, who clearly was a weak commander, decided that he couldn't defend the position without the southernmost defences and had to retreat to the main camp.
Oh, wow. Okay, Condé is kind of making headway here, like, through this area. He's actually advancing on his side.
Condé, ever an opportunist, would have followed, but his troops were in terrible shape, and it was now dark and raining, so he called it a day after taking Sternschanze. The French now controlled Schönberg, mostly due to Condé's personal bravery. To the west, the dogged fighting continued until 4 AM, when Mercy was informed that the hill was lost. This meant that his rear might be open to an attack, so the Imperial commander disengaged and moved back to the camp, leaving Turenne in control of the passage. The French lost almost 3,000 troops on this day, most of them on Turenne's flank. Imperial casualties were around 1,000.
Alright, the French have advanced, like, they're making headway, but the thing is, they're losing a lot of, they're losing and taking quite a lot of, abuse as they're going, so I'm wondering if this will end up becoming kind of somewhat of a Pyrrhic victory, with high casualties, even if they succeed, you know? I'm giving it to Condé, though, like, you know, this is so far going better than I thought, but I guess we'll see, man. On
August 4th, using the fact that Condé's army was exhausted, Mercy moved his army to the east and ordered his troops to create another line of defense based around the hills of Loreto and Gipfel. The Imperials were now defended by the Dreisem to the north and east, with Freiburg providing cover for their northern flank. Most of their infantry was on the hills, with the rest of the footmen and cavalry in reserve near the village of Adelhausen. As there was now parity in the number of troops for both sides, Mercy was sure of victory. Condé took the main Imperial camp on the same day, while Turenne positioned his troops in Merzhausen. The French used the day to rest and tend to the wounded. There was still no agreement between their commanders, as Turenne wasn't eager to go on another frontal attack. Condé, however, was sure that Mercy's retreat on the 3rd was a rout, and that the fortifications on the hills were a bluff. The commander devised a plan to take the fortifications. His troops would charge up the Loreto hill and tie up as many enemies as possible, while Turenne was to use the cover of the Becker Wood to cover his advance and then take Vornhalde, which would make the defense of the hills untenable and give the French victory.
Dude, I am, like, so nervous right now. like I said, I'm not really rooting for any side anymore, and I don't think I was ever rooting for any side in this series. I'm just, like, as neutral as humanly possible this time around. Like, I'm not really, like, rooting for anybody. But I'll admit, though, like, Condé is giving me massive, like, nervousness because he just keeps going. His strategy is to attack, and again, like, Mercy again is once again playing defensive. I think he's doing a pretty good job, though the French are still advancing really hard, and like I said, I don't know, like, that prediction about the whole route thing is even, like, a good one to make. Like I said, I'm a bit nervous that any minute now Conde's plan is about to unravel, and he's about to get everyone killed, you know what I mean?
The French attack was supposed to start at 8 AM on the 5th of August, yet Conde and Turenne were suddenly informed of movement to the south of Von Halder. Both commanders rode to their extreme right to personally scout the situation, as the Imperial presence in the area would mean that Turenne's right flank might be in danger and their plans were no good. However, Despinard, who was to command the French movement towards the Loreto Hill, didn't receive news of that, and his troops were too close to Mercy's forward redoubts. A group of dismounted dragoons was defending this position, and they opened fire at the advancing French. Although this wasn't the position Despinard had to attack, he ordered a unit to take it. In response, Mercy reinforced the redoubt. Despinard had to send in even more reinforcements.
Oh my gosh. So... oh my gosh, that's bad.
And the battle started.
Conde's not even there anymore. So, like, just the battle... oh no.
Lechelle's musketeers, tasked with taking the Becker Wood, thought that it was the signal to attack, but the Bavarian troops were still not distracted, so most of the Frenchmen who exited the forested area were killed on sight. Dormont, who had to charge here, moved forward in confusion, but immediately was greeted.
Yeah, no way they can win, right? Like, it's already falling apart. It was already iffy when Conde was there, but now that everyone has jumped the gun, I don't see how the French can win this, man. Like, I've been like...
by Imperial volleys. The French were stopped in their tracks. The Imperials then counterattacked, pushing Dormont downhill. Conde, who was returning to his flank from reconnaissance, concentrated nearby forces and charged the advancing Bavarians, driving them away. The French commander then took over the troops of Dormont and moved against the enemy position at Von Halder.
I do admire Conde's bravery, but the fact that he's so close to the battle also makes me nervous, because, like, what if he gets shot or killed or something? Like, I'm still not over Gustavus's death, you know, when he went there and then got killed, so... like I said, no commander is safe, especially this. I admire the bravery. I'm not taking that away from him, but, you know... Mercy is, like, in the distance, right? Like, He's definitely playing it more safe, I feel.
This attack was met by overwhelming musket and cannon fire, killing and wounding many Frenchmen, missing Conde only by chance. Luckily for the retreating Conde, the French centre, led by Turenne, attacked the centre of the Imperial fortifications, which forced Mercy to reinforce this position and allowed Conde and Despinard to disengage. The French lost more than 1,000 in that encounter battle, while Mercy's casualties were less than 300.
Oh. Again, Mercy is losing less men. Meanwhile, Conde is, like, starting... like I said, he's losing so many people.
Again, Conde wasn't discouraged and ordered another attack. This time, Turenne was going to divert enemy attention to the south, while Despinard would take Loreto Hill. This assault began at 3 PM. The French managed to scale the northern hill, but were promptly treated with bullets and cannonballs and were forced to fall back. The second wave was able to get closer to the redoubts, but once again was forced to run. The same fate awaited the third and fourth French waves, stubbornly sent uphill by Conde.
Dude, Conde, I think you're losing way too many dudes. like, I get the aggression, his plan is attack, but man, like, Mercy's side is just like decimating them and their numbers right now.
The French commander decided to add another element to his attack. The 3rd and 4th waves reformed and attacked the enemy fortifications from the west, while the dismounted dragoons, whose armour was heavier than those of the footmen, charged the Loreto Hill from the north. Initially, that worked as intended, with the Bavarians being pushed back and losing the redoubt. However, Mercy had his own cavalry reserve, and it was sent forth to attack the French dragoons from the right.
Oh no!
This stopped the French advance. Conde attempted to turn the tide by sending his last reserves into the fray, but that was countered by Mercy's last reserves. This was a desperate fight.
Yeah, man, like I said, I don't see how Conde could win this. I don't think he's gonna win, like...
Slowly but surely, the Bavarians started to gain an upper hand and pushed the French downhill. Luckily for Conde, Turenne still had some cavalry reserves, and they moved left, blocking the Imperial pursuit.
Oh, snap!
These horsemen defended the French footmen until nightfall. Conde lost another 2,000 men, bringing the total of his losses to 8,000, almost half of his army. The 3rd day of the battle was the deadliest for Mercy, with more than 1,000 killed or wounded. Overall, he had lost 2,500 through 3 days of battle. Conde and Turenne spent the 6th fortifying their camp, worried that Mercy, who now outnumbered them, was going to attack, but the latter proved to be too cautious, or maybe his army was also too battered to attack. Conde's bravery that gave him the brilliant victory at Rocroi was perfectly countered by Mercy, whose defensive strategy changed the balance of power in the war once again. But was that enough to save the Empire? We will find out in the coming videos in this series.
Okay, so yeah, overall Conde failed in completely defeating Mercy, and again, Mercy's preparation, like I said, was just much better, and it proved at the end that he really did rely on the brashness of Conde, but it wasn't as one-sided as I thought it would be. Like, Conde still kind of fell into that, but you know what I mean, like, kind of... At the end, I think Mercy definitely was the better planner, but Conde still went further than I thought he would, but still, like, I have to give it to Mercy. I think his preparation was much better, and Conde just, like, lost so many people with his just attack strategy. So yeah.
Which will be released soon, so make sure you are subscribed to our channel and have pressed the bell button.
So we're gonna end the video right here, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for the next one.